Good evening, everyone. Severe Weather Team 9 meteorologist Nathan Chuck joining you for this edition of Nate at 8. And a lot of what we've seen as of recent just continuing this week. It's been certainly pretty warm and humid stretch of weather, and was nice to see that break in the humidity present today. But we're getting back to more of that very warm and towards the humid side, although nothing really excessive for this week. It is still on that warm and a bit humid side for a lot of this week, but the relief from the heat and humidity, if you've been hoping for more of a taste of fall, it is in sight. So we're going to be discussing not only that, but also going to be discussing that overall dry pattern continuing as we extend throughout this week. You will break down the humidity, the temperatures, and the rain chances throughout this week, and even take a sneak peek into next week as well. Coming up for this edition of Nate at 8. Thanks so much for tuning in. Let's jump into things. So our current temperatures right now across the area into the 70s. This is coming off of highs that were in the 80s. Of course, the big story today was really that drop in humidity, not so much those temperatures across the area, just setting up for an absolutely gorgeous evening. Just check out those views if you haven't stepped outside this evening. Certainly, I urge you to do so because, again, it is just gorgeous across the area as we are seeing a beautiful sunset across the Ohio Valley. And in addition to that, again, the humidity, it's still nowhere to be found in terms of feeling uncomfortable at all. It is pleasant, it's refreshing, and it's reflected those temperatures in the 70s this evening. That's a cool, more refreshing 70s that is present for the sunset, and just, again, a gorgeous sight across the Ohio Valley. And we're going to be tracking that really pleasant start to tomorrow. Really another beautiful day on tap for tomorrow, just like what we had for today. But at this point for tomorrow, and then especially going into Wednesday, the humidity, it starts to creep back up. So we enjoyed that break from it for today, but you'll notice that as we get into tomorrow and especially Wednesday, it does start to creep back up. Now, I don't think there's much, possibly even no time this week that we're dealing with unbearably humid conditions with dew points in the 70s. I think we can largely, if not completely, avoid that. But Wednesday does look to be the most humid day, and that's when it is likely uncomfortably humid. So again, it gets back to being a bit excessive, I think is the best way to put it. By Wednesday, up until that point, it's more present. We're going to feel it more tomorrow. We're going to feel it more in general for a lot of this week with respect to what we have for today, but it's more tolerable. It's manageable, right? We feel it, but it's not too bad. It's not horrible to be outside in with that humidity. I think that's the best way to sum up what a lot of this week ends up being. But yeah, I think Wednesday's the most humid day. Yes, that's when it's more uncomfortable to be outside. By Wednesday, becomes more tolerable for Thursday, Fridays. We kick off high school football. And by the weekend, same story. In fact, even by Sunday, it can be on the downward trend. So I know it's extending out that far, but by Sunday into Monday is when we can notice even a further dip in those dew points, in that humidity, as we do extend going into next week. We can see that further drop in humidity, and that is when we'll see a further drop in temperatures as well. So you've been wondering, when's the next taste of fall? It's in sight, likely for early next week. So at that point, those highs are back 70s, lows back in the 50s. We're getting back to some cool and almost, you could say, chilly mornings, just amounts to what we're accustomed to, right? We've dealt with a lot of warm nights this summer. So anytime these temperatures, they start to dip in the 50s and low 50s, it almost is a bit chilly for those mornings, as we're just not accustomed to dealing with temperatures that cool. We've seen it at times, just not a whole lot so far for this summer. But that's where we can end up back early next week with those highs in the 70s. And yes, this week overall, it's warm, a lot of mid, upper 80s. It's warm, right? And by Wednesday, it's uncomfortably humid, still a bit humid outside of that going into the weekend, but nothing real excessive, right? Not really hot or really humid here over the next 10 days, but overall warm. And overall, for a lot of those days, at least a bit humid as we go into the weekend. By Sunday, those temperatures, humidity starts to drop off, and then we get more of a taste of the upcoming season into that first half of next week. Dan, good evening. Thanks for tuning in. Austin, thank you. Thank you for tuning in as well. Good evening. Hope you had a wonderful week off. I sure did. Thank you so much. Been very surprised to see the grass getting more brown. We're going to get to that in just a minute, Austin, talking about the precipitation. Joe, good evening. Thank you all for tuning in to this edition of Nate at 8 in Austin, touching on what we're going to jump into now with the rain chances. So this has been very absent. This has been really, in my opinion, a pretty historic stretch of dry weather for us here in the Ohio Valley. Now, of course, we all can think back to what we had for last year, right? We were in an historic drought, but this is really a historic dry stretch. In fact, the amount of precipitation that has been measured at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport so far for this month has been historic. 0.07 inches. Now we're 18 days through this month of August, and we are running a deficit of almost 2 inches, and 0.07 inches is the lowest amount on record from the 1st to the 18th of August for the Wheeling area since the late 1800s. Now, the records, they're not perfect. There's some gaps. There's some years missing in the Wheeling data. But what we have for climate data for the Wheeling area, what's on record, nothing stands close to this until we go back to the late 1800s. So it's been a long time, quite possibly, especially if anything recent. We're talking since 2000, which is since 2000 is really good climate data for the Wheeling area. But even since then, I mean, nothing rivals this at 0.07 inches. This is historic, and we haven't seen in decades. And from what's on record, we're possibly talking 100, 200 years. The last time that we've been talking about dealing with this low of precipitation for the Wheeling area from the 1st to the 18th of August. So, I mean, that's the first testament to how dry this stretch has been. Now, we actually started this dry stretch even at the end of July. So not only have had it so far for this month, but we go back to the end of July and we look over the past 22 days. So we're through 18 days of August. We throw a few more at the end of July when this dry stretch started. 0.08 inches. That's been it measured in over 3 weeks at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport. We look at our summer months, June through August, and that is the driest stretch on record for what we have on record for the Wheeling area since 1939. And through the 22-day stretch in 1939 for the Wheeling area was 0.05 inches. So another historic statistic just to show how dry this stretch has been. Very, right? And we're not in drought conditions yet, but I wouldn't be surprised. We're going to start to see more abnormally dry, and we are on our way likely to seeing some drought conditions issued in our area as we do extend here. The latest drought monitor will be issued this Thursday. We could start to see more locations abnormally dry. All right. And that's where a lot of us, because of this dry stretch, is seeing Austin touch on it, and Renee's saying this as well. We're getting brown lawns, right? And this is why. I mean, it's been a historic stretch of dry weather, not only for this month, but even since the very end of July. The past 22 days have featured very little precipitation. And again, we're talking some pretty historic in terms of records as well, from what we have on record for the Wheeling area since 1939. A 22-day stretch. We're looking at just specifically August since the late 1800s. Just a very historic, right? Nothing we've seen in the past few decades. Nothing we've seen since the late 1990s. And the records from there for the Wheeling area are not the best, and there's some missing data as we go back before that. But, even from what's on record, extending earlier into the 1900s and even the very late 1800s, there is some data there. And from what's in that data, I mean, we even have to go back, like you see, in 1939 for this stretch over 22 days in our summer month. And for August specifically, there was nothing measurable from the 1st through 18th back in the late 1800s for the Wheeling area. So, it's been some time since we've rivaled anything like this sort through the middle. I mean, we're past the middle, through the middle of August, and then as well, just specifically over 22-day stretch into our summer months. That's how long it's been. We're now 22 days here into this dry stretch that has only amounted 0.08 inches of rain. That is it. And it's been a very dry pattern that we've been stuck in. And likely, as we look ahead, overall, still pretty dry stretch of weather. That wouldn't be surprised. It was a wet start to this summer. It's been, we're pretty much on par with where we typically are this time of the year for precipitation, looking back to what we had at the beginning of this month. And now, because of the deficit we've had so far for this month, we're even starting to trend below normal for the year. So that, will take some time. We had a wet start to summer, so it'd take some time before we start to see drought conditions really take hold across the area. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if we're starting to see updates on that drought monitor issued this coming Thursday, at least abnormally dry for a lot of our area. And from there, with this dry pattern continuing, could even start to see then some drought conditions developing later on this month into our area. So yes, certainly has been. We've seen it, right? And we see the evidence with our lawns, this dry stretch of weather. Carol, thank you for the update. You're welcome. Thank you for tuning in. And Patty, good evening. And good evening, Renee. And Renee touched again on those lawns being dry. And Dawn said grass hasn't been cut in over 2 weeks. Doesn't need it. Yeah, absolutely. Brown lawns and the grass not growing, right? I mean, it's very little. Yes, and some folks joining in may say, yeah, it's nice not to have to cut the grass. I know a lot of us though don't necessarily like to see the lawns turn brown, but maybe some fans of both. I don't know. Maybe some fans of both. Why no rain, Renee? It's just it's a dry pattern. So, and here's the kicker: the precipitation that we have coming our way, as you can see over the next 5 days, there's no high threat for rain here over the next 5 days. Just no high threat. The precipitation we likely see is still more hit or miss, but there are 2 time periods to watch. So the first one is coming up not too far from now. I'd watch really tomorrow night into Wednesday. It's with a cold front passage tomorrow night into Wednesday. While still likely more hit or miss, there likely will be at least some showers and thunderstorms in our area going into Wednesday. By Thursday, Friday, rain chances look to drop back off. Good timing for our high school football games kicking off later this week. Likely dry, right? Humidity more tolerable. It's still very warm, but not too bad with the humidity. Rain chances look to hold off for Thursday, Friday for our high school football games kicking off by Saturday into Sunday. That would be our next round I'd watch for at least some showers and thunderstorms with another cold front passage. So Saturday into Saturday night is the time period likely as of now to watch for at least potential for some showers and thunderstorms with another cold front passage. It's behind that front then that we notice that drop in temperatures, humidity, Sunday into early next week. That's more of a pattern changing cold front passage that we'll see. But again, there's not great chances. This is just, good chance for at least some showers and thunderstorms. Is just that the coverage is likely going to be, much more hit or miss, right? It's that more scattered or patchy precipitation that we'll likely see. So some of us, we do likely pick up some needed rain Tuesday night into Wednesday, as well as Saturday into Saturday night. It's just that some of us still likely going to miss out. Yes, there can be some of us that stay bone dry as we go through this weekend and quite possibly over the next 10 days as we settle into another quiet stretch of weather, cooler, very comfortable, a lot lower humidity, lows back in the 50s, highs back in the 70s, but quite a bit of sunshine, but likely not much, if any, precipitation into next week. So a lot of the next 10 days, it is dry. And then this is, again, a mainly dry pattern, some rain in the mix, but just not a whole lot. And we're hope at least pick up a little bit from tomorrow night into Wednesday, and hopefully a little bit more Saturday into Saturday night with this series of cold front passages. Outside of that, this is a quiet and dry stretch of weather coming our way. Austin saw some hummingbirds this weekend drinking their sugar water. They say not to include any red food color. Good tip there, Austin. Very cool. Thank you. Thanks, Nate. Missed you last week, and you're welcome, Shelly. Had a good time vacation last week, but certainly happy to be back and continue our Nate at 8, continue these weather updates on the evening. And, of course, I'll keep you posted. The latest coming up on 10, 11 o'clock as well. So certainly nice to see some good weather coming up Thursday, Friday for a kickoff for high school football games. Mix of sun and clouds Thursday, more sunshine likely breaking out on Friday. It's a very warm, right? It'll be a warm evening for high school football Friday, but thankfully humidity, not too bad. So temperatures should start to drop off into the 70s pretty quickly as games are kicking off. So I think overall Friday evening, it's looking nice. It's looking nice because the humidity, not horrible. Those temperatures should start to fall into the 70s at that point. A good amount of sunshine. So I think, overall, this is a pretty darn good start to some high school football weather coming up going into Friday evening. By the weekend again is when we'll see those rain chances pick back up Saturday into Saturday night with another cold front passage, and then that's what ushers in that more of a taste of fall coming up early next week with those highs back in the 70s and lows back into the 50s, but certainly a quiet stretch of weather and quite historic. We saw at least something measurable. We had a long stretch where we didn't have anything measurable at the Wheeling Out County Airport. We've had at least something measurable, although it's been less than a tenth of an inch at the airport, and we'll see and try to pick up any rain we can here over the next 10 days. That's for sure. Thankfully, as well, in terms of impacts from those showers and thunderstorms, Tuesday and Wednesday, they look low. It doesn't look like a high risk at all for any severe weather or any flooding coming our way. So good news there. And again, we'll just pick up on some needed rain and hope that at least some of us can pick up some rain going into Wednesday and then again around Saturday into Saturday night. But thankfully, the impacts do look low. So thankfully, it doesn't look like we're dealing with a big risk for severe weather or flooding coming our way on Wednesday. But of course, I'll continue to keep you updated on where we stand with any potential for impacts going into Wednesday. So make sure to stay tuned for the latest of that. Coming up for that next edition of Nate at 8, as well as coming up here, News 9 at 10 on Fox 9, News 9 tonight at 11. We'll likely jump into more of that future cast and start to map out some of those showers and thunderstorms into Wednesday. So stay tuned for that coming up tonight. And we'll also, again, keep an eye on the latest going into Saturday. I'll let you know how those rain chances stand for the weekend. Again, keep in mind this precipitation, nothing worth canceling plans over. It's not. So, if you have plans coming up into the weekend or even this coming Wednesday, it's just something to keep in mind. May have to dodge that round of rain, but this doesn't look like precipitation that's worth canceling any plans over. Certainly not. Just something to keep in mind going into the weekend as well as the middle of this week. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for tuning in to this edition of Nate at 8. I appreciate it as always. Happy to be back here, and we'll track some pretty beautiful weather coming up for our kickoff for high school football games. Of course, I'll bring you the latest on any potential impacts, the timing. We'll map it out with future casts coming up with those showers and thunderstorms into Wednesday. So stay tuned for that coming up. News 9 at 10 on Fox 9, News 9 tonight at 11. And as always, for the next edition of Nate at 8, we'll break it down and give you the latest coming up tomorrow evening for the next edition of Nate at 8. I hope you had a wonderful weekend and have a great night. I'll see all of you on the next edition of Nate at 8.